Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to unpack a 500-year-old philosophy, one that, believe it or not, offers a really unique solution to one of the biggest questions humanity has ever asked.
All right, so let's just dive right in. And we're going to start with a puzzle, a huge one that's been stumping thinkers for centuries.
And the question is this: is ultimate reality one single thing, or is it many? Are you and me and the entire universe, are we all just fundamentally one substance, one with God? Or are we totally, completely, eternally separate things? So you've got these two major camps, right? On one side, you have absolute oneness, the idea that everything is God. And on the other side, you've got absolute difference, the idea that God and everything he created are completely separate. Now, these two ideas have basically been duking it out for most of philosophical history. But what if the answer isn't so black and white? What if it's not an either-or situation at all? And that's where our story really kicks off. We're going back to 16th century India to a spiritual revolutionary named Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because he came along and offered what you could call a master key, something that could finally unlock this cosmic riddle. Okay, so the first part of this key is a principle called a beta. It just means oneness. And the logic is pretty simple. Since everything comes from the same supreme source, it all has to share the same essential spiritual quality. We're all made of the same stuff, so to speak.
But wait, there's more. Right alongside that, you have the principle of beta, which means difference. And this is crucial. It says, okay, yeah, the quality is the same, but the quantity and the function, whoa, completely different.
And this is where it all comes together. The third, and maybe the most important part of this master key, is akintya. It means that this idea that things can be one and different at the exact same time is, well, it's inconceivable to our little human minds. It's not something you can just reason your way through with logic. You kind of have to accept it as a reality that's beyond our usual way of thinking. So you might be thinking, okay, that's a cool idea, but what do we do with it? Well, this concept, achintya beta abeta, isn't just some abstract philosophical toy. Nope, it's a tool, a master key that actually starts unlocking other huge philosophical problems. So let's take it for a spin. First up, the pantheon problem. You see this in a lot of traditions, right? You have one supreme God, but then you also have these other incredibly powerful divine beings, like Lord Shiva. So, how does that work? How do you make sense of them all without just saying they're all the same, or that some of them aren't real? Well, the Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition uses this brilliant, simple analogy. Think of it like this. The Supreme Lord, Krishna, is like milk, and Lord Shiva, he's like yogurt. Now, yogurt comes from milk, right? It's fundamentally milk, but it's also been transformed. It looks different, tastes different, and it has a completely different function. So you see, it is milk, and yet it is not milk. They're one and at the same time different. And get this relationship is actually quantified in the tradition's texts. They lay it all out. Krishna, the source, has 100% of all divine qualities. His direct expansions, the Vaishnu forms, have up to 93%. And a super powerful, distinct being like Lord Shiva, he possesses around 84%. So what you get is this really clear hierarchy that honors everyone's position while making it totally clear who the original source is. Okay, so that helps make sense of the divine family tree, so to speak. But what about us? How does this whole one and different master key apply to our own identity? What's our relationship with God? This is where we get the classic sun and ray analogy, and it's perfect. Qualitatively, we are one with God. A single ray of sunshine has the same qualities as the sun itself, right? Heat and light. But, and this is a big but, quantitatively, we're not even in the same league. We are one tiny infinitesimal ray, and God is the infinite blazing sun. See, one and yet totally simultaneously different. Now, this idea isn't just about cosmic stuff and personal identity. It actually builds into something that was, and still is, truly revolutionary for society. We're moving from abstract philosophy right into a direct challenge to some really deep-seated social rules. I mean, check this out. The philosophy's core text, the Bhagavad Gita, says it flat out. Any social division should be based on a person's qualities and their work, their guna and karma, and not by their birth. In that context,
This was a massive, radical bombshell dropped right on the hereditary caste system. And this really highlights the difference between the original spiritual idea and how it got corrupted over time. The ideal, called Varnashram, was all about creating a functional society where people do what they're naturally good at. It was about unity in diversity. But the corruption? That became the rigid, oppressive caste system, where your whole life was decided just by who your parents were. And you know what? The tradition's own history is packed with heroes who completely broke these rules. You've got Dronacharya, born a priest but became a legendary military teacher. Vishwamitra, born a warrior, became one of the greatest sages. And then there's Haridas Thakur, who was born into a Muslim family and became celebrated as the ultimate teacher of chanting the holy name. In every case, it was their actions, not their birth, that truly defined them. So who was the ultimate embodiment of this whole philosophy, of identity, of action, of this inconceivable truth? Well, it was the teacher himself, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. His life was short, but man, was it impactful. He's born in 1486, and by his early 20s, he's already started this massive public chanting movement. Then, at just 24 years old, he gives up worldly life entirely. And his whole story builds to this incredible, mysterious final act that really seals his legacy forever. You know, even his decision to renounce everything, his family, his home, it wasn't just some emotional act. It was totally strategic. By becoming a renunciate, a sannyasi, everybody had to respect him. This let him go head-to-head with powerful opposing scholars and win them over. It also, very cleverly, protected his critics because blaspheming a holy man was a serious offense. And, of course, it freed him up to travel and spread his message all over the country. But it's his final act that is the most inconceivable part of the whole story. In 1533, he just vanished. Poof. His body was never found. The most trusted accounts say he literally merged into the deity of Lord Jagannatha in the great temple at Puri. This divine merger was the ultimate proof of his identity. And it was also a genius move. It prevented any future fights over a burial site or his physical remains.
Okay, so why are we talking about a 500-year-old story? Why does any of this matter today? Because the mission didn't stop when he disappeared. Not by a long shot.
This incredible legacy was carefully preserved and eventually built into a global movement. First, his direct followers, the 6 Goswamis, wrote down a massive library of theology to systematize everything. Then later teachers had to fight off corrupted versions of the message to keep it pure. And then, in the 20th century, a teacher named Srila Prabhupada took on the mission of carrying it all to the rest of the world, founding the International Society for Christian Consciousness, ISKCON, back in 1966.
And all of this brings us right back to you, to the final big takeaway. If this philosophy is right, if you strip away all the external labels we use to define ourselves, your family name, your job title, where you were born, your social status, after all of that is gone, it leaves you with one profound question. Who are you really?